Once you've installed and launched Essentials, the next thing you're going to want to do is create connections to the environments you intend to work with. And these can be SharePoint on-premises or Office 365 environments. So I'll talk you through the use cases for each connection. So what we'll need to do is click on the Home tab and click on Connect to SharePoint. So from here you need to give the connection a name. Now the name is what it will appear as in the navigator on the left here. So the name isn't important technically, but it's important to choose a good name so you can recognize the connection easily in the navigator. So I'm going to connect to my Office 365 tenant. So I'm going to call it Office 365 tenant. So from here I need to choose a connection type. Now there are three connection types, SharePoint site or site collection. So this can be on-premises or Office 365, and that will connect you to a specific site. You can make a farm connection to an on-premise instance, or you can connect to the Office 365 tenant. So for this first example, I'm going to connect to an Office 365 tenant. So I enter the tenant admin URL. So that is HTTPS:// then the tenant name. So mine is MSTND 527566. Now the extra piece you need to put in here is a -admin and then just the end of the URL. So mine is .sharepoint.com. And now I just click finish. So when that connects, it's going to prompt me as to which additional things I want to connect to. So I can connect to groups, OneDrives, and sites. So that's going to show me that in the next window. Okay, so before that, I need to enter the admin credentials. So in order to make this type of connection, I need to have credentials for a global admin user. So I'll enter that in here. And click connect. Okay, so now you see it's prompted me to connect to these various web applications. So for this example, I'm going to connect to all sites, groups, and OneDrive for Business. And that will load all of those in the navigator on the left there. So I click OK, and that starts loading the web applications. So now the download is complete for the Office 365 tenant. I click OK. And now if I expand out the project on the left here, you'll see that it's loaded the sites and OneDrive for Business. Now if I expand out sites, that shows me all of these site collections. Now in order to work with one of these, I need to double click it, and it will say here, the site has not been loaded from SharePoint. Do you want to load it? I click OK. And that will proceed to load the contents of that site collection. Once that's done, then I'll be able to browse into the lists and start working with the content within that site collection. So that site collection is now loaded, and I can now expand it out in the navigator and double click on a library, for instance, and it will show me the contents of that library. So we've got 3 documents there. From there, I can also expand out and load the sub-sites by double clicking on those as before. So just going to click run in the background and let that load in the background. So the next type of connection we're going to make is a site connection, and I'm going to connect to a site in Office 365 in this example. So what I'm going to do actually is expand out here and go down to the Meta One site collection, right click on that and choose view in the browser, and that will load that in my browser. I'll just sign in. And that has taken me to the Meta One landing page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this URL here. So I'm going to take it as far as the end where it says there Meta One. Right click and copy that. I'm going to go back to Essentials. I'm just going to close this section here just so it's neat. And click again, connect to SharePoint. And then call this connection Meta One. Meta 1 site connection. And now the type, I'm going to choose SharePoint site or site collection and just paste the URL of the site in there. Now I'm going to click Finish. Now, because I've recently used my credentials, it hasn't prompted me to enter those again, and now it's going to load just that specific site. In order to make a connection at the site level, you can be either global admin or also a site admin to make that connection. So now the site has loaded, I can click OK, and I can expand out that connection. You see we've got Meta 1. And I can drill down into the lists, double click on a list, and it will show the contents of that list. So that's loading a site. The next connection we're going to look at is a farm connection. So this is specifically for an on-premises connection. So from here I click Connect to SharePoint. I give it a name. So I'm going to call this Wingtip Farm Connection, because the example on-premises instance is called Wingtip. And I click on this drop down here and I go down to on-premises farm connection, and it says central administration required. So from there I need to put in the central administration URL. So on my server here I click on central admin and I need that URL there. So as far as the /. So I right click on there and choose copy. And I go and paste it into there and click Finish. And this is now going to load my instance at the tenant level. So from here we can choose the applications we want to load. So let me just expand this out so we can see each of those. So I'm going to go with Wingtip Intranet only in this instance just to save time loading, and click OK. And then it will load that web application much the same as it loaded the site collections when we were connecting to Office 365. So the farm connection is now complete, and I can click on OK, expand that out, and view the different sections of that, like perhaps expand out the Wingtip intranet. There we go. That's going to start loading that now. So the final connection I'm going to make, just for completeness, is I'm going to connect to an on-premises site. So from the farm connection here, it's showing me the site collections within there. So if I right click on the Wingtip intranet and click View in the browser, that will navigate me to the Wingtip intranet. So I'm going to copy this URL here as far as .com. So intranet2013.wingtip.com, right click and choose copy. And then from here, I'm going to click Connect to SharePoint, and I'm going to call this Wingtip Intranet site connection, and drop down from here, site or site collection, paste the URL in there, and click Finish. And that's now going to load that specific site. There we go. So if I expand that out, the Wingtip Intranet site collection, site connection, you see it's just loaded that specific site. Double click on the documents and it will load the contents of that library. So those are the connections we can make to SharePoint: Office 365 tenant connection, Office 365 site connection, on-premises farm connection, and on-premises site connection.